Mike Real Studios.
Neville Chamberlain served as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom from 1937 to 1940. He is best known for his policy of appeasement towards Adolf Hitler's Germany. This policy was rooted in the horrors of World War I, which had left a deep scar on Britain. Chamberlain, like many of his contemporaries, was determined to avoid another devastating war. He believed that by making concessions to Hitler, he could satisfy Germany's grievances and prevent another global conflict. He was convinced that diplomacy and negotiation were the only paths to lasting peace. However, Chamberlain's appeasement policy has been widely debated by historians, with some arguing that it only emboldened Hitler and made war inevitable. This essay will examine Chamberlain's life, his policy of appeasement, and the events that led to his downfall. It will explore the Munich Agreement, a pivotal moment in his premiership, and analyse its consequences. Finally, it will offer a balanced perspective on Chamberlain's legacy, acknowledging both the criticisms and the context of his decisions. Appeasement, in the context of the 1930s, referred to the policy of making concessions to an aggressor in the hopes of preventing war. This policy was driven by a complex set of factors, including the trauma of World War I, the fear of communism, and the belief that Germany had genuine grievances. Britain, still recovering from the Great War, was in no mood for another conflict. The horrors of trench warfare and the immense loss of life were still fresh in people's minds. Pacifism was widespread, and there was a strong desire to avoid war at all costs. Furthermore, many in Britain believed that Germany had been treated unfairly by the Treaty of Versailles, which had imposed harsh punishments on the defeated nation. They felt that some of Germany's demands, such as the return of lost territories, were justified. Chamberlain, a pragmatist by nature, believed that appeasement was the most realistic approach to dealing with Hitler. He saw it as a way to buy time, rearm, and potentially avoid a war that Britain was ill-prepared to fight. The Munich Agreement, signed in September 1938, was the culmination of Chamberlain's policy of appeasement. It involved Germany, Italy, Britain, and France, and it allowed Germany to annex the Sudetenland, a German-speaking region of Czechoslovakia. Hitler had been demanding the Sudetenland, claiming that the German population there was being persecuted. Chamberlain, eager to avoid war, agreed to Hitler's demands, believing that this would be his last territorial claim in Europe. The Munich Agreement was met with mixed reactions. While some praised Chamberlain for averting war, others criticized him for betraying Czechoslovakia and emboldening Hitler. The agreement became a symbol of the failures of appeasement. Despite Chamberlain's hopes, the Munich Agreement did not satisfy Hitler's ambitions. In March 1939, just 6 months after the agreement, Germany invaded and occupied the rest of Czechoslovakia, demonstrating that Hitler's promises were worthless. The invasion of Czechoslovakia shattered any remaining illusions about Hitler's true intentions. It became clear that he was bent on expansion and that appeasement had only made him bolder. In response to Hitler's aggression, Britain and France abandoned their policy of appeasement and issued guarantees to Poland, promising to defend it if Germany attacked. However, these guarantees proved insufficient to deter Hitler. On September 1, 1939, Germany invaded Poland, marking the beginning of World War II. Section 5, Chamberlain's Wartime Leadership, A Nation Unprepared. With the outbreak of World War II, Chamberlain found himself leading a nation that was ill-prepared for a major conflict. Britain had underestimated Germany's military strength and had failed to adequately rearm during the 1930s. Moreover, public opinion had turned against Chamberlain. The failure of appeasement had damaged his credibility, and many blamed him for the outbreak of war. Despite these challenges, Chamberlain remained committed to defeating Nazi Germany. He oversaw the early stages of the war effort, including the evacuation of British children from cities and the mobilization of the British economy for war production. However, his wartime leadership was marked by a sense of hesitancy and a lack of clear direction. Section 6. The Fall of Chamberlain. Resignation and Disillusionment. In May 1940, after a series of military setbacks, Chamberlain faced a vote of no confidence in the House of Commons. Although he survived the vote, He realized that he no longer had the full support of Parliament or the country. He resigned as Prime Minister on May 10, 1940, making way for Winston Churchill. Chamberlain's resignation marked the end of an era. It was a time of profound national crisis, and the country needed a new leader who could inspire and unite them in the face of Nazi aggression. Chamberlain's fall from grace was swift and dramatic. Just a year earlier, he had been hailed as a peacemaker. Now he was seen as a symbol of failure and appeasement. Section 7. Chamberlain's legacy. A controversial figure in history. Neville Chamberlain remains a controversial figure in British history. His legacy is inextricably linked to the policy of appeasement and the outbreak of World War II. Critics argue that his appeasement of Hitler was a grave mistake that only emboldened the Nazi dictator and made war inevitable. They contend that he was naive to trust Hitler and that he should have taken a tougher stance against German aggression. However, Chamberlain's defenders argue that he was a man of peace who was trying to avoid another devastating war. They point out that he was acting with the best interests of his country at heart, given the limited options available at the time. Section 8. Conclusion. The enduring lessons of appeasement. Neville Chamberlain's premiership serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of appeasement and the importance of standing up to aggression. While his motives may have been noble, his policy of appeasement ultimately failed to prevent World War II. The lessons of Chamberlain's era continue to resonate today. In a world facing new challenges and threats, it is essential to remember that appeasement rarely satisfies an aggressor. Instead, it is crucial to confront aggression with strength and resolve, while also pursuing diplomatic solutions whenever possible.